Hello and welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Gabriel the Bibi Capaldi and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please do check down below that you are subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free and helps us pop up on your feed a bit more often. Throughout the 7 sectors of known space, the stories spread in hushed tones at the edges of trading outposts and in the darkened corners of the space stations. Stories of humans, the Deathworlders from Earth. Most species dismissed these tales as exaggerations. Cosmic folklore meant to frighten younglings. Greydor was among those who scoffed at such stories. Humans. He spat the words like it tasted foul on his tongue. Another inferior species visiting our station. Greydor reclined in one of Node Station 1's most exclusive lounges, idly spinning an energy pistol around his finger. His crimson skin gleamed under the ambient lighting, the small ridges along his forehead casting subtle shadows across his face. His eyes, set slightly wider apart than a human's, exuded boredom as he surveyed the room. Standing nearly 6 feet tall with a lean, athletic build, he cut an imposing figure even among his own kind. The ceremonial markings etched into his forearms, denoting his status as the son of the station's administrator, were visible beneath the sleeves of his expensive attire. Beside him, Hawks nodded eagerly, his bulkier frame shifting as he leaned forward. At 6 feet tall, he was taller than Greydor, his shoulders considerably broader, with thick muscles rippling beneath his crimson skin. "What are you thinking, Greydor?" Hawks asked, voice thick with the accent of their homeworld. His muscular arms, their species only possessed 2, unlike some of the multi-limbed traders that frequented the station, flexed unconsciously. Lyrics, the third member of their group, shifted uncomfortably. His thinner frame and more pronounced forehead ridges matched his perpetually anxious demeanor. "Whatever it is, remember what happened last cycle? Your father was—" "My father," Greydor interrupted, eyes narrowing, "has more important matters to attend to than monitoring my recreational activities." He holstered his pistol with practiced ease. "The lower docking bay just received some new arrivals. I heard there's an unusual ship, a design I've never seen before." Hawks's face split into an eager grin, revealing teeth slightly sharper than his usual meals would require. "Let's check it out, then." "Your father explicitly said after the last incident," Lyrics interjected, his voice carrying the higher pitch common to the more cautious members of their species. "My father says a lot of things." Greydor cut him off with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Nothing ever happens to us, haven't you noticed?" Greydor's confidence came naturally to him. Being the son of Galator, Node Station 1's administrator and de facto ruler, had its privileges. The sprawling interstellar trading post, with its multiple docking bays, marketplaces, and residential sectors, all operated under his father's watchful eye, and, by extension, under Greydor's protection. "Come on," Greydor said, rising from his seat with fluid grace. They exchanged a look, but followed. Greydor led his companions through the station's service corridors, using access codes that only station leadership possessed. As they navigated the labyrinthine passages, he noticed the temperature gradually dropping. They were approaching the station's outer ring where the docking bays were located. They arrived at the lower docking bay, a cavernous space filled with vessels of various designs and origins. The artificial gravity seemed heavier here, adjusted to accommodate species from high-gravity worlds. "There," Greydor pointed, his long fingers extending towards their target. "That one." The ship stood apart from the others, smaller, more streamlined, with subtle armor plating that an untrained eye might miss. Unlike the ostentatious vessels of wealthy merchants or the utilitarian bulk of cargo ships, this craft bore minimal markings, just a small insignia on the hull that none of the 3 recognized. "Owner's gone to the trading hub," Greydor noted, checking a datapad with station activity. "He just left and won't be back soon. More than enough time for us." They approached the ship's external door cautiously. Lyrics, knowing the drill, pulled out a portable cutting tool from the satchel slung across his chest and began working on creating a new entry point beside the actual door. The metal glowed red, then white, as the tool cut through the hull. "Careful not to damage anything valuable," Grador warned, eyes gleaming with anticipation. "I want to see what kind of tech this species has." "I'm reading unusual material density," Lyrics muttered, eyes on the screen of his cutting tool. "This hull is thick." Grador waved away the concern. "Probably stolen, or repurposed. No trader needs military-grade plating unless they're hiding something valuable." After several minutes of concentrated effort, the newly created entry fell inward with a heavy clang. They entered cautiously, finding themselves in the ship's cargo hold. The space was surprisingly organized to the typical chaos of a trader's vessel. Metal crates were secured to the floor, and the lighting automatically adjusted to their presence. "Strange design," Hawks commented, running his three-fingered hand along one wall. Each of his digits ended in a hardened nail-like cap, evolved for climbing the rocky terrain of their ancestral lands. "Too organized, too clean." "I agree," Lyrics added, inspecting what appeared to be power conduits. "Look at these energy pathways. They're sorted by color. Who wastes time with that?" As they explored deeper into the ship, the tension built. The corridors were narrow, designed for functionality rather than comfort. They passed what appeared to be small living quarters, sparsely decorated except for a few framed images showing a tall, muscular human male standing beside a smiling female. In one image, they were accompanied by a large furry creature. "Primitive image capture," Grador scoffed, tapping one of the frames with a dismissive finger. "Who keeps physical images anymore?" "Some species believe they hold spiritual significance," Lyrics suggested, always more sensitive to cultural differences than his companions. "Then their spirits must be primitive as their technology." Grador laughed, deliberately knocking one frame to the floor where it cracked. They continued their exploration, finding an unusual feature. A reinforced door that didn't match the ship's layout according to Lyrics' scanner. "Could be where they keep the valuables," Grador suggested, excitement building. "Let's find the access panel." As they searched the nearby walls, a low growling sound emanated from behind them. Spinning around, they came face to face with a large animal, the same furry creature from the images. To their eyes, it was a strange and terrifying beast, muscular, with bared teeth and raised fur along its spine. "What is this creature?" Hawks exclaimed, backing up rapidly, his boots clanging against the metal floor. The sound reverberated through the narrow corridors, bouncing off the unyielding walls and amplifying their sudden panic. The creature lunged forward, teeth bared, its furry body tensed for attack. They scattered in different directions, their panic immediate and complete. The creature focused on Grador, perhaps sensing him as the leader, and clamped its jaws around his leg. Grador screamed in pain as the sharp teeth penetrated his leggings and broke his red skin. "Get it off! Get it off!" he shrieked, trying to shake free. Hawks attempted to kick the animal, but this only made it more aggressive. The creature released Grador's leg only to snap at Hawks, catching his arm and drawing blood. Lyrics retreated to a corner, frozen in terror. In a moment of desperate panic, Grador pulled out his energy pistol. Without hesitation, he aimed and fired. A bright beam of blue energy struck the creature mid-growl. The animal yelped once, then collapsed to the floor, its body still. A moment of stunned silence followed. Grador stared at the motionless form, breathing heavily, then a slow smile spread across his face. "Stupid beast," he spat, kicking the animal's body. "Let's tear this place apart." Fueled by adrenaline and indignation, the three aliens began angrily ransacking the ship. They overturned storage containers, smashed the framed images, ripped out console components, and discharged their weapons into walls and equipment. Their initial plan to steal technology was forgotten in their destructive rage. "That thing bit me," Greydor snarled, blasting a control panel. "Whatever species owns this vessel deserves this." After 20 minutes of vandalism, Greydor signaled that they should leave. All three were sporting injuries, Greydor's leg bearing teeth marks, Hawks's arm bleeding, and Lyric's with scratches from his scrambled retreat. "Let's go," Greydor said, chuckling despite his pain. "Whatever these humans are, they're going to have quite a surprise when they return." As they exited through their makeshift door, their laughter echoed through the empty docking bay. None of them noticed several critical details about the ship: the concealed weapon ports along the exterior, the subtle reinforcement ports in the hull design, or a small insignia near the cockpit that bore the mark of the Interstellar Mercenary Guild. These details meant nothing to Greydor and his friends. After all, what could one human possibly do against them on a station controlled by his father? Jonathan Small moved through the crowded trading hub with slow steps, towering above most of the station's inhabitants. At 6'5", with shoulders nearly twice the width of the average human, he drew curious glances from the various species that populated Node Station 1. His weathered face remained impassive beneath long hair peppered with grey, giving nothing away as he completed his purchases. The items in his pack were mundane enough: food supplies, replacement power cells, basic medical provisions, but he'd also acquired specialized components that would be harder to source in the outer systems. 2 more cycles, and he'd be back in deep space, away from the noise and complications of civilization. As he approached the lower docking bay, a group of small, chittering creatures scurried out of his path. He barely noticed. Years of mercenary work had conditioned him to focus on potential threats rather than harmless locals. His steel-grey eyes continuously scanned his surroundings, an instinct as natural as breathing. The first sign that something was wrong came 50 meters from his ship. The security officer, a purple-skinned being with multiple eye stalks, who normally patrolled the section, was conspicuously absent. Jonathan's pace slowed imperceptibly as his hand moved beneath his weathered jacket, fingers brushing against the concealed pistol at his waist. When he rounded the final corner and caught sight of his vessel, he stopped completely. There, cut into the reinforced hull of his ship, was a roughly circular hole approximately 1 meter in diameter. The edges had been melted by some sort of cutting tool. Jonathan didn't rush. Rushing got people killed. Instead, he methodically surveyed the surrounding area, noting the absence of security personnel, the lack of alarm notifications, and the convenient malfunction of the nearest surveillance drone. Not a random act, then. Something deliberate, and something the station authorities were either complicit in or willfully ignoring. He approached his ship slowly, drawing his pistol but keeping it low at his side. The makeshift entrance showed signs of multiple beings passing through, distinct footprints in the fine dust from the landing bay. 3 sets, from what he could tell, none human. Ducking through the irregular opening, Jonathan entered his cargo hold. The methodical organization he'd maintained was now in shambles. Storage containers lay overturned, their contents scattered across the floor. Deep burn marks scarred the walls where energy weapons had been discharged. The destruction was extensive, but seemed chaotic rather than targeted, not the work of professionals looking for something specific. He moved deeper into the ship, maintaining silence since they could still be inside. The damage continued throughout. Navigation systems damaged, communication station smashed, personal items destroyed. He catalogued each violation with detachment until he reached the main living quarters. There, among the wreckage of his few personal possessions, lay Brutus. The German shepherd's body was motionless. A distinctive energy weapon burned visible on his side. Jonathan froze, then slowly knelt beside the animal. For the first time since entering the ship, emotion cracked through his demeanor. Brutus, he whispered, gently touching his dog's head. His hand trembled slightly as he closed the animal's eyes. The dog had been with him for 7 years, a gift from Anne before the illness took her, the only living connection to his life before, when he'd been more than just a weapon for hire. More than just the infamous mercenary that station administrators and local warlords spoke about in hushed tones, not daring to say his name. He remained there in silence for several minutes, completely still except for the controlled rise and fall of his chest. His eyes fell on a shattered picture frame on the floor nearby, a photo of him and Anne smiling on a beach on Earth, Brutus as a puppy playing at their feet. He didn't need to pick it up. The image was burned into his memory more permanently than any physical record. Without a single tear in his eyes, Jonathan rose and stepped over the broken glass from the picture frames. His expression had hardened into something that would have terrified anyone who understood what it meant. Behind the calm exterior, a cold calculation had begun. Methodical and unstoppable as a glacier, he walked to a seemingly ordinary section of the metal wall and pressed his palm against it in a specific pattern. A hidden door slid open silently, revealing a small armory, only considered small by Jonathan Small's big standards. The room contained an impressive array of weapons, military-grade rifles mounted on the left wall, tactical shotguns on the right, with grenades, explosives, and even compact missile launchers, organized in protective cases. Body armor and tactical gear hung on racks, while various blades gleamed in a glass display case. Jonathan surveyed the arsenal but selected only 3 items: a standard Glock pistol, which he checked and loaded methodically, a compact tactical knife, which he sheathed at his ankle, and a titanium-reinforced baseball bat, which he tested with a few practiced swings before securing it to his back. He had no interest in large-scale destruction or collateral damage. Nothing that killed too fast was allowed. Returning to the command console, he activated what remained of his ship's systems. Check recordings and run facial recognition on station security feeds. Find who did this. The computer was quick, accessing the station's poorly secured surveillance network. Jonathan waited patiently as images flickered across the screen. Hundreds of feeds from throughout Node Station 1 being analyzed and discarded until the algorithm found what he needed. 3 red-skinned figures fleeing his ship, one limping, another clutching a bloodied arm. The timestamp matched his estimated window for the break-in. The computer identified them as members of the Rexian species, inhabitants of a mid-gravity world 2 systems away. At the same time, Greydor fidgeted nervously as he was led into his father's office, a spacious chamber with panoramic views of the station and surrounding space. The medical treatment for his leg had been quick but painful, regenerative compounds working to close the wounds from the creature's bite. He still limped slightly, wincing with each step. "Father, you called for me." He tried to keep his tone casual. "Is it those merchants in Sector 7 again, or did another inspector arrive needing our special hospitality?" Galator, an imposing figure with deeper red skin marked with the ceremonial scarification of their leadership caste, didn't respond. He stood with his back to his son, hands clasped behind him, staring at a holographic orb floating above his desk. The orb displaying rotating security feeds from various parts of the station. "Father?" Greydor repeated, confused by his silence. Galator suddenly slammed his fist onto the desk with such force that the heavy metal surface dented slightly. "Did you and your worthless friends raid a human's ship today?" His voice was dangerously quiet. Greydor's confidence faltered. "I don't know what—" "Do not lie to me!" Galator roared, spinning to face his son. His eyes were wide with an emotion Greydor rarely saw in his father: fear. "We might have explored an unknown vessel," Greydor admitted carefully, "but all I did was defend us from a strange furred beast that attacked." Before he could finish, Galator crossed the room in 2 strides and drove his fist into Grador's stomach with such force that the younger Crexian doubled over, gasping for breath. "You fool," Galator hissed. "You absolute fool. Do you have any idea what you've done?" He grabbed Grador by the collar of his garment and dragged him to the holographic orb, forcing him to watch the security footage that clearly showed him and his friends entering and later leaving the ship, their injuries visible. "That vessel belongs to a human. Do you know what humans are?" Galator's voice rose as he launched into an urgent explanation. "They come from a death world, a planet with gravity 1.5 times our standard, with extreme temperature variations, constant warfare, and predators that would make our nightmares seem pleasant." Grador stared at his father, confusion mixing with the first traces of real fear. "They evolved as persistence hunters," Galator continued, his voice dropping to an intense whisper. "Do you understand what that means? While most sentient species evolved from prey animals or opportunistic omnivores, humans chased down their food until it collapsed from exhaustion." The colour drained from Grador's face as his father pulled an additional footage showing Jonathan Small walking through the station earlier that day. His size and bearing now took on new significance as Grador realized what he'd potentially provoked. "This one is registered as Jonathan Small," Galator said, his voice dropping further. 16 confirmed solo operations against fortified positions. Former special warfare operative from Earth's military. Current independent contractor with the highest success rate in the mercenary guild. Galator manipulated the display, bringing up additional information. 3 years ago, he eliminated an entire pirate outpost on Eladar. 37 armed combatants by himself. Because they raided a civilian transport his alien friend was on, killing her and several others. Grador felt his legs weaken beneath him. What will happen to me?" "The creature you just killed," Galator said, ignoring the question. "It was a companion animal. Humans form intense emotional bonds with these creatures. Some say it's an evolutionary adaptation from their pack-hunting days." The implications hit Grador like a physical blow. He'd not just damaged the human's property, he'd killed something the human considered family. "We need to offer compensation," Grador suggested desperately. "Credits, rare materials, whatever it takes." Galator stared at his son for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he pulled Grador into a tight embrace, his body trembling slightly. The gesture was so uncharacteristic that it terrified Grador more than the punch had. "Go to Elder 6, Galator ordered, his voice hoarse. "Confess what you've done. Ask for purification." "But will I be okay?" Grador asked, confusion and fear evident in his voice. Galator's face betrayed a momentary flash of anguish before he masked it. "Yes, we will hide you, son. Don't worry," he said, the lie evident in his tone, though Grador failed to notice it. "Now go, quickly." Grador nodded, relief washing over him as he hurried from the office. His father would protect him. His father always protected him. Once Grador left, Galator remained motionless in the center of his office, shoulders slumped in defeat. He activated his communication device. "Karzik," he said to his head of security, "gather our best guards, all of them, and contact the safe room technicians. We'll need to prepare it immediately." "Sir." Karzik's voice crackled through the device. What's the threat level? Galator's gaze drifted to the security feed showing Jonathan Small methodically making his way through the station. His expression implacable, purpose evident in every movement.
Human,
Galator replied.
and Karzik, whatever you think is too much protection, it won't be enough.
He deactivated the communication device and stared out the vast emptiness of space beyond the viewport. In all his years as administrator, through pirate incursions, trade disputes, and even the occasional military standoff, Galator had never truly believed his position might be in jeopardy, until now. Because humans didn't just fight, they didn't just kill. When provoked in certain ways, they became something else entirely. Something the rest of the galaxy had learned to avoid at all costs. Galator had seen the footage from other incidents. He knew what was coming. 26 standard hours had passed since Greydor's confession. The chronometer on Galator's wrist silently tracked each second with merciless precision. Outside the reinforced walls of the administrative sector, Node Station 1 continued its commerce and activities, most of its inhabitants unaware of the looming threat. They went about their routines, oblivious to the fact that something unprecedented was stalking the corridors. Galator sat in his private quarters deep within the administrative sector, surrounded by 5 of his most trusted underlings. Each had been personally selected for their combat prowess and unwavering loyalty. Each wore the most advanced armor available in this sector of space, with energy weapons charged and ready. The room itself represented the pinnacle of security engineering. Triple-layered doors, reinforced walls, and independent life support systems. The outer defensive ring reports all clear, said Karzik, Galator's head of security. The large Krexian's scarred face reflected the blue glow of the monitoring screens as he studied the security feeds. We have 40 guards stationed at every access point, automated defense systems active, and all transportation hubs locked down. Galator nodded absently, his eyes fixed on the displays. The tension in his body had not eased since he'd sent Greydor to the safe room.
And my son?
Secured, Administrator, confirmed another underling, a female Krexian with specialized protective training. 3 security doors, each with different biometric locks. The walls are reinforced with titanium plating. Without the access card, not even a warship's cannon could breach it.
Good,
Galator murmured, though his expression remained troubled.
What about talks and lyrics?
An uncomfortable silence followed, broken by Karzik clearing his throat. We lost contact with their security detail 3 hours ago. Galator's head snapped up.
You lost contact, and you're only telling me now?
We assumed it was a communication malfunction, Karzik said quickly. The lower levels have been experiencing interference.
You assumed?
Galator rose from his seat, his imposing height forcing Karzik to step back.
Did you verify?
I'll contact the outer perimeter immediately, Karzik said, raising his communication device. Perimeter Team Alpha, status report. Only Static answered his call. Perimeter Team Alpha, acknowledge, he repeated, voice rising slightly. More static. Perimeter Team Beta, respond. The static seemed to grow louder, almost mocking in its persistence. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Then, a loud crash echoed through the station, distant but powerful enough to be felt even in their secure location. The vibration traveled through the floor plates, causing the liquid in Galator's drinking vessel to ripple. What was that? One of the underlings demanded, drawing his weapon and moving towards the door. Galator rose slowly from his chair, resignation settling over his features.
He's here.
As if confirming his words, the main security panel at the room's entrance flashed red. The system had detected an unauthorized presence in the outer corridor. A moment later, the first security door suddenly dented inward with tremendous force.
Impossible,
whispered the technical specialist.
While not metallic, the door is rated for...
Another impact followed, and the door buckled further, the material groaning in protest. The underlings formed a defensive position, weapons aimed at the failing entrance. Galator stood behind them, hands clasped behind his back, waiting. With a final thunderous crash, the door flew off its hinges, spinning into the room and crashing against the far wall. In the doorway stood Jonathan Small, his imposing frame silhouetted against the corridor lights. His clothing was spattered with blood that clearly wasn't his own, yet his face remained eerily calm, showing no sign of exertion despite having just destroyed a security door designed to withstand military-grade explosives. Most disturbing of all was what he carried. In each hand, Jonathan held a severed head. Hawks and Lyrics, their expressions frozen in terror, eyes wide and glassy, the clean cuts at their necks indicating the work of an exceptionally sharp blade. The underlings stared in shock, momentarily paralyzed by the gruesome sight. Even Galator needed a moment to process what he was seeing before barking, "Kill him now!" The first underling raised his energy weapon, but Jonathan was faster. A pistol appeared in his hand, replacing one of the heads which thudded to the floor with a wet sound. A single shot echoed through the chamber, and the security officer collapsed with a precision hole between his eyes, his energy weapon discharging harmlessly into the ceiling as his fingers spasmed on the trigger. "Primitive projectile weapon," another guard hissed, as if offended by the outdated technology. The second underling charged forward with a vibroblade, taking advantage of the moment Jonathan needed to shift his stance. The blade vibrated with destructive energy capable of cutting through armor. Jonathan dropped the gun, drew his knife in a fluid motion, and sidestepped the attack. As the guard's momentum carried him forward, Jonathan grabbed him by the throat with his now free hand and drove the knife deep into his neck, severing major arteries. Blood sprayed across the room as the body fell, the same crimson shade as the Crexian's skin. The vibroblade clattered uselessly to the floor, deactivating automatically once separated from its wielder. The third guard, a burly security chief with reinforced armor, attempted to grapple with the human. It was a logical strategy against most opponents. The Crexian's physical strength would overwhelm most species, and the close proximity would make weapon use difficult. Jonathan allowed him to close the distance, then suddenly lifted him completely off the ground, the muscles in his arms bunching beneath his jacket. With terrifying strength, he brought the guard down across his knee. A sickening crack signaled the breaking of the guard's spine. The sound was so violent that one of the remaining guards flinched visibly. The fourth and fifth underlings attacked together from opposite sides, a coordinated assault that might have worked against any other opponent. Jonathan moved with unexpected speed, grabbing both by their heads and smashing their faces together with brute force. The impact was so powerful that pieces of skull and brain matter exploded outward. He repeated the action 3 times until both guards went limp, their facial features unrecognizable masses of tissue and bone. In less than 2 minutes, all 5 specialists lay dead or dying. The floor was slick with blood and other bodily fluids. Jonathan stood amid the carnage, his breathing only slightly elevated, his eyes now fixed on Galator. The station administrator had fallen to his knees, all pretense of authority gone. Galator, who had negotiated with pirate kings and faced down military commanders, knew when he was outmatched. This wasn't combat. This was slaughter. Jonathan approached slowly, retrieving his baseball bat from his back. The reinforced weapon caught the light as he held it loosely at his side. "The safe room code," Jonathan said, his voice surprisingly soft. The contrast between his gentle tone and the brutality he had just displayed was more terrifying than any shouting could have been.
Or I burn this entire sector down with everyone in it.
Galator hesitated, weighing his options. His son was doomed either way, but he had other children, younger ones who needed their father, and if he died, he knew exactly which of his many enemies would target his family next. Was Greydor's life worth the sacrifice of everyone else on this level? Worth the lives of his other children? Meeting Jonathan's gaze, Galator reached into his pocket and produced a security card. He offered it silently, a gesture of surrender. Their eyes met briefly, a moment of understanding between two beings who comprehended the cold calculations of survival. In that instant, Galator saw something unexpected in the human's eyes. Not mindless rage, but purpose. This wasn't berserker fury. To this human, this was justice, delivered with absolute conviction. Jonathan took the card without a word and walked towards the adjacent corridor, where the safe room was located. Galator remained kneeling as he heard the distinct sound of the safe room's security systems disengaging. The soft beep of the card reader, the pneumatic hiss of the first door sliding open, the mechanical whir of the second barrier retracting, the final chime of the innermost sanctuary being breached. Then came what would haunt him for the remainder of his life. Greydor's voice, first confused.
"Father sent you to—"
A pause as understanding dawned.
"No, please, I don't know, I didn't know what it was to you."
Then pleading.
"I have credits, technologies from worlds you've never seen. I stole them from many species. My father can get you some assistance. Loyal, beautiful, genetically modified ones. Anything you want. Please."
Then screaming. Raw, primal sounds that Galator had never heard from his son before. These sounds were punctuated by heavy, constant impacts, the baseball bat connecting with flesh and bone, so powerful that Galator could feel the vibrations through the floor. The screaming stopped abruptly, but the impacts continued for several more seconds. Then silence fell, broken only by the soft footsteps of the human returning. Jonathan emerged from the corridor, the bat now stained dark with blood and tissue. Small fragments of bone were embedded in the metal. He didn't look at Galator as he walked past. His mission complete.
"He's still breathing,"
Jonathan said quietly as he reached the shattered doorway. Then he stopped and looked back.
"Just kidding."
Galator remained on his knees long after Jonathan had gone, surrounded by the bodies of his most trusted guards. In the silence, he contemplated his greatest failure, not teaching his son that some battles should never be started in the first place, that some lines should never be crossed, and that some enemies cannot be defeated, only avoided.